Amazing secret revealed. Millionaire's mother acts poor. Faces public humiliation by bride. Son. Daniel's heart raced as he stood at the threshold of the rehearsal dinner, his mind buzzing with the impending chaos that loomed. His mother, Margaret, renowned for her philanthropy yet cloaked in humility, was a paradox he couldn't afford to unravel on the day before his wedding. He had watched her all his life, earning admiration and respect through her quiet contributions, but now he feared her values might clash with the storm brewing in Emily's family. In the dimly lit banquet hall, the chatter of guests swirled around him, but Daniel's thoughts spiraled deeper into dread. Emily's family had exhausted their savings trying to inflate their reputation, and the soaring costs weighed on her shoulders, creating a gap that felt impossible to bridge. She had always thrived on independence, but now, overwhelmed, he could see the battle play out in her eyes, where her pride wrestled with her family's reality. The love of his life stood beside him, vibrant yet fragile, and he couldn't help but feel the tightening knot in his chest. Just moments later, Margaret took her place at the podium, a picture of grace amidst the tension. Daniel's pulse quickened as he overheard Emily exchanging whispers with her family. He sensed the electricity in the air, the potential for confrontation simmering just beneath the surface. The thought of Emily confronting his mother sent his mind racing. It felt like impending disaster. He clenched his fists, already bracing for the fallout. Before he could steady himself, Emily seized the moment, inviting Margaret to speak, turning the room electric with uncertainty. The room's ambience shifted palpably, chiming like distant alarm bells as Margaret began to speak about her work, weaving tales of hope and encouragement. But Emily's restless expression cracked the veneer of appreciation, eventually morphing into open hostility. "Why pretend, Margaret?" Emily's voice broke like thunder, slicing through the polite applause. "How can you champion modesty while hiding mountains of wealth? Isn't it deceitful?" The guests halted. Silence engulfed the hall, the gasps rippling through the crowd as disbelief settled in. Daniel's stomach dropped as he exchanged glances between his mother and his bride-to-be, his maternal pride clashing violently with the woman he adored. "Emily, you don't understand," Daniel began, rising uneasily, but he could see her flaming passion, a mixture of anger and desperation. His heart raced, muscles tensing as the urgency to maintain harmony warred against his instinct to protect his mother. Was he to choose between love and loyalty? "How can you sit here in your splendor while we struggle to keep our heads above water?" Emily's gaze pierced Daniel. "How can you align yourself with a woman who hides behind a facade of humility while cultivating silence about her fortune?" That accusation hung heavily in the air, a cruel pin against the balloon of the evening, and Daniel's skin prickled with discomfort. As he struggled to reconcile the severity of the moment, Margaret hung her head, visibly shaken, her humility suddenly feeling like a burden. Just as Daniel prepared to speak, his mind whirling, he sensed the auditorium tilting, shifting away from the present chaos as a figure emerged from the guests. A community member, eager to speak, lifting her voice against the dimming hope. The hall responded with a murmur, and the power of her words held a glimmer of redemption. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As baby steps of honesty began trickling from friends recounting Margaret's impact, Daniel felt the pressure stretch taut around him. He was caught between the yearning for truth and the desire to shield Margaret. Faces shifted, softened. Emily's determination wavered amidst emotional, reflective glances from her family, each story tugging at their established beliefs. With the night now spinning into chaos, Daniel stood still, grappling with the cacophony of loyalties demanding his attention. One more word, one more revelation could swing everything into an abyss he couldn't pull himself back from. Just as he caught his breath, he caught the fleeting gaze of Emily, a tangle of resolve and vulnerability, her spirit still flickering. Would he ignite or extinguish the flame between them? With unresolved tensions pulsing like a heartbeat in the room, Daniel stood on the precipice of a decision that could either shatter their future or unite them in truth, waiting for an answer that felt impossibly far away. The room held its breath, drawn to the tangled threads of emotion that had surged into an imminent explosion. Daniel shifted his weight, uncertain of which way to lean. He still struggled between protecting his mother and standing firm beside Emily, the woman he loved. Margaret's delicate frame seemed to collapse further under the weight of judgment, and as he eyed the incredulous expressions from the guests, he realized he couldn't remain silent. With a sudden burst of clarity, Daniel stepped forward. "Emily, wait!" His voice cut through the murmurs that had flourished into a symphonic intensity of anticipation. "This isn't just about reputation or wealth. It's about the choices we make and how they define who we are." Daniel's heart hammered as he fortified his resolve. A ripple of surprise jerked through the crowd, and he felt the weight of countless eyes. He swallowed hard, preparing to expose his own conflict of interests and unveil his mother's reality while protecting the woman he adored. "You think that my mother has hidden herself behind a facade, Emily, but you don't know the truth. It's not deceit, it's integrity." Emily's expression transformed from anger to confusion, and in that moment, the collective tension began to dissipate. Now was not just a fight for understanding, it was an opportunity to demonstrate strength forged from vulnerability. Daniel lifted his chin, momentarily losing himself in the simmering emotions threading through the room before speaking again. "Mom has dedicated her life to helping others quietly. If she's chosen to keep her wealth private, it's because she cares more about the people she supports than how it reflects on her." He turned to face his mother. "Margaret, we should be proud of who you are. We should be allowing this revelation to empower rather than burden us." Margaret slowly lifted her gaze, and for the first time in the evening, a spark of something akin to hope flickered in her eyes. Daniel chose this moment to abandon the bleak corner of fear that had been gnawing at him. This was a rapid evolution, a shift from hiding behind false narratives to embracing authenticity. He directed his focus back to Emily. "I understand your fears. You want to be seen as worthy. I respect your struggle. But we can't build a foundation based on secrets or assumptions. Can we confront this together?" His voice resonated within him, fierce and unyielding, fueled by both vulnerability and strength. Emily's expression softened as the words took root within her. The tension began to transform amidst the murmurs of clarity echoed by the audience. She clenched her jaw, wrestled with the complexities of her feelings, and finally, the fire of her indignation waned. "I just wanted you to see—" "To see what?" Daniel interrupted, feeling the electricity curve through the air. "Just another layer of conflict, another way to keep us apart." His heart pounded as he dared to believe they could mend this chasm of misunderstanding. Daniel concluded with a deep breath, wondering how they all fit into this new narrative. Slowly, guests began to nod, faces softened by the illumination of truth emerging between the tension. In that charged silence, grounded by newfound honesty, Emily took a step forward, voice tremulous, yet tinged with determination. "Maybe I could open my mind and try to understand what being humble really means." As she made eye contact with Margaret, still trembling on the edge of vulnerability, Daniel felt a precarious tension balance between them like a fragile, teetering tightrope. Just as it seemed they might forge an understanding amidst the chaos, a voice rang out louder than before, challenging the fragile peace that had begun to take hold. "But what if hiding isn't the only choice? What if it leads us straight to an even bigger storm?" And in that unforeseen moment, Daniel realized that their fragile truce could break against an all-too imminent revelation. There were more powerful truths lurking just beneath the surface, capable of propelling them toward unforeseen changes. As the voice echoed through the room, Daniel felt an electric jolt shoot through him. The unexpected challenge caught everyone off guard, and for a moment he feared the fragile understanding they had begun to build was slipping away. He glanced at Emily, whose brows knitted in confusion, while Margaret's demeanor hardened again, tension tightening her posture as she prepared for whatever storm was brewing. "Who are you?" Daniel found himself asking the speaker, the words trailing thick with a mix of anger and protective instinct. He pivoted, surveying the crowd, eyes scanning for the source of the dissonance. A man in a tailored suit, sharp features and eyes obscured by an undeniable skepticism, stepped forward. "I'm David Klein," he announced, his voice as smooth as the fabric of his suit. "And I raise a point that shouldn't be ignored. We can't simply ignore the deeper issues at play here. What other truths lie behind this facade of humility?" The room reverberated with murmuring, a reminder of how poised they all were to consume this drama. Daniel's heart pounded, not just from anger, but from a grounding realization. This was not merely about his mother's secret. It was now about who he wanted to become, about confronting his fears and repositioning his estranged relationships. "David, this isn't a circus for you to showcase your judgments," Daniel shot back, steadier than he felt. "My mother's choices are her own. You don't know her, nor do you understand the life she has built. It's past time we stopped laying bare our private struggles to suit your need for entertainment." The weight of those words resonated with unexpected clarity, dipping into the well of self-assertion he had long neglected. David raised a brow, unfazed. "Perhaps, but protecting the truth only buries it deeper, doesn't it? And when it comes to making decisions that affect others, don't you think they deserve honesty, even if it comes at a cost?" In that moment, Daniel's thoughts collided. David wasn't entirely wrong. Hiding would only lead to greater storms ahead, yet the cost of that honesty was uncertain. What would it unravel? The very threads connecting him to Emily? His mother? Standing at this crossroads of potential revelation, he felt the pull of Emma's earlier cries for understanding, the pressure of Margaret's silent sacrifices, and the looming presence of scrutiny, ready to tear apart any resolve. "Tell me, David," he challenged, his voice a sharp contrast to his fluttering insides. "Are you speaking for yourself or your own insecurities? Because if you knew, truly knew, what it meant to stand in someone else's shoes, you wouldn't be so eager to expose weaknesses." A ripple of surprise twisted through the crowd again, this time reflecting Daniel's growing conviction. Yet, even as he spoke, a whisper of doubt gnawed at him. Was he truly ready to confront the full spectrum of their reality? David paused, caught off guard. "Maybe you're right, but I'd rather face the truth than live in a cocoon of ignorance." As the scrutiny settled in on them, Daniel was faced with a sudden clarity. Unraveling the truth about his mother was one thing, but exposing themselves to the public could be a blinding light or a devouring darkness. Was he willing to unveil emotions and histories that lay deeply buried? "If we could just focus on understanding each other better," Daniel began, but his words hardened as Emily stepped into the light. "Daniel, wait," she interjected, her voice sturdy yet careful. "If we're going to navigate this storm together, we need to be prepared for everything, and that includes the risk associated with the truth." Her words bore weight, underlined by conviction he hadn't anticipated. In this moment of veering clarity, Daniel sensed the gravity of their choices. Trust and vulnerability clashed within him, escalating into a palpable storm. Would they choose honesty, even if it meant riptides of uncomfortable truths emerged? And as he glanced once more at Margaret, the need to protect and confront gnawed at his core, forcing him to realize that the greatest revelations may still lie ahead, darkened shadows waiting to dance in the light. But before he could voice a plan, a small voice from the back broke through again, carrying the potential for unforeseen consequences. What if honesty means staring down our greatest fear? Daniel felt the ground around him shift as uncertainty encased his heart. What if confronting his past led to choices that could alter everything he held dear? What was he really willing to reveal? The air around Daniel thickened with tension. The small voice that had just spoken wove doubt and fear into an already turbulent atmosphere. He could feel the weight of everyone's gazes upon him, waiting, expecting him to express the thoughts racing through his mind. It was as if a spotlight illuminated the fragile line between what he knew and what he was willing to expose. "Staring down our greatest fear," he echoed under his breath, drawing in a shaky breath. What did that mean? Was he truly prepared to confront the truth not just about his mother but about himself? The thought lay heavy on his conscience, lurking like a dark cloud ready to unleash a torrent of emotions he had kept intact for years. "Let's pause for a moment," Daniel said, forcing his voice to steady. He turned his focus back to Emily, whose expression reflected a mixture of apprehension and support. There was a subtle challenge in her eyes that ignited something deep within him. He couldn't let fear dictate their fate, nor could he allow David's provocation to dismantle the tentative connection they had begun to forge. "Look, maybe there are deeper truths we need to explore," he continued, navigating the currents of anxiety that surged through him. "But that doesn't mean we should open this Pandora's box without understanding the risks. We need a plan, some way to ensure we're prepared for what might come out." Emily nodded slowly, and he felt an electric charge of solidarity. They were in this together, poised to tackle whatever lay ahead. "What do you propose?" she asked, her confidence blending with his uncertainty. It was a step toward collaboration, a tangible commitment to face the storm as a united front. Daniel took a moment, collecting his thoughts, moving through the myriad of possibilities running through his mind. There was a truth he wanted to address, but the sheer weight of unveiling these layers felt unnerving. It wasn't just about revealing his mother's past. It was about exposing their insecurities, their failings. Would this bring them closer, or would it serve to widen the chasm already threatening to engulf their relationships? "We break it down," he declared, a growing determination solidifying in his voice. "Each of us shares what we're afraid to say. The more we draw out our fears, the less power they'll have over us." The idea rolled off his tongue with surprising ease. This tactic resembled teamwork in the trenches of his corporate life, a strategic maneuver to protect his allies while navigating a minefield. Margaret's eyes softened as she observed him, revealing a hint of vulnerability. "And what if we share something we're not proud of?" she asked quietly, weighing each word carefully. "Then we own it," Daniel replied, drawing upon a newfound conviction. "It's part of who we are. Whether it's painful or shaming, it's our truth. And so long as it's communicated with intent, it can be a bridge instead of a barrier." The thought empowered him, solidifying his own understanding of how precious truth could be in fostering acceptance. Daniel noticed David's expression change, the skepticism fading slightly, as if to acknowledge this approach. "Owning your past has its merits," he said, his tone more respectful. "It can reshape narratives and humanize situations that seem larger than life." Seeing that transformation in David, Daniel considered whether honesty could indeed forge alliances, even in the most challenging of circumstances. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could emerge from the shadows of doubt that had followed him for so long. With each word exchanged, every shared glance with Emily and Margaret, the storm clouds felt less threatening. They began to transform into something more manageable, lightning forging connections rather than wreaking havoc. Yet, amid the cautious optimism, a nagging anxiety persisted. Could they truly dismantle the facade built of intricate lies? Each revelation could shift the narrative in unpredictable ways. "Let's do this then," he said, surprising himself with the resolve. "But we have to keep one another anchored as we delve into our truths. Who knows how this may end?" As the room remained still, every participant aware of the storm ahead, Daniel's heart raced with the weighty possibility of acceptance and fear alike. Before they could proceed, the small voice chimed in again, its challenge unmistakable. "But what if the truth pushes you apart instead of holding you together?" The question hung in the air, electrifying the moment and leaving Daniel grappling with uncertainty. Just how far was he willing to journey into the tempest of secrets and self-revelation? What paths would they venture down once the floodgates opened? Staring into the uncertain faces around him, Daniel felt the enormity of what lay ahead. His initial surge of determination was fading, replaced with a wave of doubt that threatened to pull him under. He glanced at Emily, whose steady gaze urged him forward. This was a turning point. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach. He had to lead them through this. He had to own his fear. "Let's establish some ground rules," he proposed, mentally drafting an outline that would protect them from potential fallout. "We speak with honesty, but we do it with care. No attacks, no blaming, just truth. The nods around the room reassured him. It was minimal, but it was enough. The shared commitment was like a tether, clinging together in the dark. Margaret seemed to exude a quiet strength, while David kept an expression that hinted at contemplation. Perhaps there was shared trepidation among them all, an unspoken bond that had always lingered beneath the surface tension. "Who wants to start?" he asked, voice wavering under the intense scrutiny. But beneath that was a flicker of hope igniting his resolve. Someone had to take the first leap. Someone had to carve a path through the dread. "My mother," Margaret began, her voice breaking slightly. "She always pressured me to be perfect." The words hung heavy in the air as she paused, painfully dissecting her thoughts. "It made me feel like I could never measure up. No matter what I did, it was never enough." Daniel noticed how her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and he felt an echo of that ache in his own heart. Memories of his childhood, the constant need for parental approval, flooded back relentlessly. She was afraid of failure in her own right, and part of him wanted to reach out and assure her that they were in this together. "I can relate to that," he admitted, his voice steadying as he moved forward. "My mother. She sacrificed everything for my future but kept me from the truth about her own struggles. I didn't realize how alone she felt until it started unraveling. The pressure. It became suffocating." To his surprise, David leaned in closer, nodding as if he had just glimpsed a kinship. "Yeah, my upbringing was the same, always being compared to my older brother. Seems like we all carry these weights," he mused, his tone now free of hostility, transformed into something almost reflective. As more layers peeled back, Daniel felt lighter. Each revelation was like a guilty secret exhaled, chaotic but oddly revitalizing. He was witnessing the power of vulnerability emerging within that tense space. The storm they had been fearing was rapidly morphing into an opportunity for connection. He sensed the hesitations slowly dissipating. But with each shared truth, the stakes rose higher. What if they exposed the animosities festering beneath? What if the truths they unearthed were so deep they wouldn't be able to return from them? Would their newfound honesty obliterate their relationships? "Let's delve deeper," Emily encouraged, her voice echoing the shared urgency. "We can't just scratch the surface. If we don't face our fears directly, we'll be trapped in this tension." Daniel hesitated. His chest tightened with an unfamiliar sensation. Was it real fear or just panic? Looking at Emily, he recognized a fierce determination mirrored in her face. Here was someone willing to explore the dark recesses with him, to battle through uncertainty together as a team. Taking a steadying breath, he exhaled the last remnants of hesitation. "Then let's push ourselves past the discomfort. I'm ready. Let's confront whatever lies in the depths of our truths, together." As the words left his lips, Daniel felt an electrifying pulse in the room. They were standing on the precipice of a new dawn, a moment pregnant with potential and danger. Would they emerge stronger from this collective storm, or would fractures form that would splinter their group irreparably? Resilience bubbled beneath the surface, and for the first time, Daniel could sense the tremendous power hidden in shared vulnerability. Yet the question lingered, unanswered. Could this raw honesty propel them forward, or would it leave them scattered like debris in the winds of their past? Suddenly, Margaret's tear-streaked face broke into a revealing smile. "Let's do this. We can't control the outcomes, but we can control our honesty, our willingness to be brave." As Daniel prepared to share the darkest part of his story, he felt a shift happen beyond that moment. In that charged atmosphere, amid breaths held and soft glances exchanged, he realized they had embarked on a pivotal journey of transformation. The words he braced himself to vocalize would transform everything: his relationships, his identity, his understanding of family ties. What lingering shadows loomed behind his story that could shatter this fragile bond, exposing demons he buried too deep? Daniel's heart raced as he prepared to share his truth, the room pulsing with a silent urgency. He could feel the weight of their collective anticipation, a pressure building like the quiet before a storm. This was not merely a storytelling session. It was an invitation to uproot long-hidden secrets. What had he buried deep within himself? The shame of failure, the gnawing fear of disappointing those who mattered most, and the aching longing for acceptance that had shaped him into who he was. Could honesty unearth those vulnerabilities and reshape their understanding of one another? He cleared his throat, his voice trembling slightly. "When I was younger," he began, "my biggest fear was not succeeding. I watched my mother struggle to build a life for us, sacrificing everything so I could chase my dreams. But there was a cost." He paused, gathering the threads of his thoughts. She was never happy. She wore her sacrifices like a badge, but in reality she was drowning, consumed by the expectation to always provide. I realized too late that her unhappiness stemmed from never taking time for herself. I thought if I could achieve what she wanted for me, it would somehow validate all she did. He sensed a shift. The tension thickened as his words hung precariously in the air. Their faces morphed, painting an array of emotions: sympathy, understanding, reflection. Daniel searched their gazes, looking for clues. What did they see? A victim of circumstance, or a man slowly emerging from his self-imposed shadow? David shifted in his seat, his brow furrowing. I took those expectations and turned them into this relentless drive. It was never about me. It was always about preserving her dream, even if it meant crushing mine. The confession tumbled out, unguarded. Margaret's expression softened, her empathy weaving through the emotional fabric of the room. "I understand that so well," she replied, her voice quivering. "It felt like there was an invisible checklist that dictated my worth, one that I could never fully complete." "Exactly," Daniel agreed, stoking the embers of their emerging solidarity. "It's like I was living a double life, one meant for the outside world, and another filled with shame when I failed to measure up. I thought if I only pushed harder, I'd win the approval I'd yearned for." Emily leaned in, her voice unwavering. "But can we really live up to those expectations? Or are we just fated to become shadows of ourselves, perpetually trying to please others?" The atmosphere trembled with a realization. Fear had long governed their lives, overshadowing their true desires. Daniel noted how the exchange was forging a bond, how revelations echoed off the walls like a chorus of longing. They had begun to unearth those buried desires together, a collective excavation of pain and courage. "Maybe," he interjected, taking a chance to steer the conversation deeper, "the real challenge is embracing our imperfections. Perhaps true strength lies in vulnerability, in allowing ourselves to be seen without the masks we've worn for so long." As he spoke, he sensed a subtle recognition in each face surrounding him. These were not just shared struggles of inadequacy, they were threads woven into their individual tapestries, reiterating that they were not alone. David, brow now stern, responded, "And how do we break that cycle? How can we shift this narrative to be one of empowerment?" The question hung heavily, an anchor in their narrative. How could they transform the burden of expectation into a source of resilience? Daniel pondered for a moment, feeling the gravity of their collective past and future. "Maybe we do it together," he replied, brimming with a cautious optimism. "We confront our fears and strip away the layers that have muffled our voices for too long. We learn to celebrate our failures and embrace who we are, flaws and all." They nodded, an unspoken pact crafting itself among them. Each was investing in the possibility of liberation, the courage to rise from the remnants of stifling expectations. This was no longer just Daniel's journey. It had now become shared, resonating deeply within each of their psyches. Yet as they delved deeper into their vulnerabilities, Daniel's stomach churned with a new realization. Would they all be able to bear the weight of each other's truths? What if some shadows were too dark for them to confront together? Margaret's voice broke through the tension, a sliver of clarity shining through her doubt. But what happens when our truths start to unravel relationships? What if exposing these deep-seated fears generates rifts instead of repairing them? In that moment, Daniel understood they were treading dangerous waters. The very act of peeling back their facades could provoke unimaginable reactions and irrevocable consequences. An undercurrent of fear coursed through him. The journey toward authenticity had begun, but now Daniel faced a new dilemma, confronting the shadows that threatened to engulf them or stepping back, allowing old sorrows to resurface unaddressed. The road ahead remained fraught with uncertainty, but there was no turning back. They stood on the edge of a transformative experience, ready to confront ghosts of their past. As Daniel inhaled deeply, he felt the intense electricity of the moment spark a latent courage. They were all in this together, but would that be enough when the darkest truths were laid bare? The answers lingered unresolved, yet one thing became clear. The reality of their transformation would depend on how far they were willing to go into the heart of their fears. Now they faced a choice: to leap into the unknown together, or to retreat and nurse the wounds of their past. Daniel's heart thudded in his chest as uncertainty rippled through him. Margaret's question had jolted his composure, and the implications lingered ominously in the air. As they all absorbed the gravity of needing to share deeper truths, he sensed the challenge ahead was not just about their individual revelations, but about surviving the fallout. "I think we need to set the stage, create a safe environment," he proposed carefully, sensing a mix of willingness and trepidation among the group. "We're all vulnerable here, and it's crucial to establish boundaries. We share our truths, but we need to agree to hold space for each other, no judgment." David nodded, though his expression suggested he understood the stakes. But what happens if someone's truth is too difficult to bear, or if it shatters what we thought we knew about each other? Daniel's mind raced. Was he ready for that? He felt a creeping doubt nibble at his courage. The truth, after all, was a wild beast. It could liberate or destroy. "Then we face it together. We can't turn back now. We've started down this path, and each step forward might hurt, but it could also bring us closer. Isn't that worth it?" Emily leaned forward, her brow knitting in thought. "But we have to be prepared for the outcome," she cautioned. "What if we can't handle someone's truth?" "I don't have all the answers," Daniel admitted, gesturing as if to disperse the tension. "But this is about growth, about breaking free from our pasts. The only way to break the cycle of fear is to confront it." As Daniel spoke, he felt a shift in energy. Margaret and Emily exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of determination and lingering doubt. He could see the inner conflict reflected in their eyes. They all wanted to dismantle the heavy structures of expectation, but fear held them back, like shadows looming in the corners of their minds. They needed to take the leap. "Let's do a practice round," Daniel suggested, deciding to model the vulnerability he asked for. He could feel the invisible walls slowly giving way. "I'll go first." He glanced around the room, searching for faces that might provide some guideposts of reassurance. "My truth is, I've been running from my own dreams for too long. I've spent my life chasing prestige, trying to please others through achievements, but at a terrible cost: my happiness." The confession felt raw and simultaneously liberating. He couldn't gauge how they would react, but as their eyes pinned to him, he felt a ripple of courage. He continued, "I've tricked myself into thinking I knew what success looked like, but now I see it as just a mirage, an illusion sustained by fear of judgment." Silence enveloped them. After what felt like an eternity, David broke the quiet. "It takes immense courage to speak that way, but we've all been conditioned to think achievements define us." Daniel felt more emboldened. "Exactly. How can we continue living lives crafted by external expectations? If we're going to lead ourselves out of this, we must get to the core of who we are, untainted by those demands." "You've opened up, and that's important," Margaret said. "It's about being genuine, but I wonder about the fallout. When we reveal our insecurities, will it invite vulnerability, or will it be too much weight for someone else to carry?" "Don't forget," Daniel interjected, fueled by the intensity of the moment, "by sharing our burdens, we may grow stronger together. Let's foster an understanding that healing comes from unveiling, not just for ourselves, but for each other." As he finished speaking, he felt the atmosphere shift again, the air thick with possibility, yet overshadowed by apprehension. The enormity of their endeavor weighed heavily on him. Were they truly prepared for what was unfolding? Margaret voiced a concern that had clearly crossed everyone's mind. What if we hurt each other in this process? Daniel's heart sank. A logical question, yet terrifying in its implication. Each of them had their own baggage. Revealing too much could tear at the threads they were trying to stitch together. "We commit to each other," he stated firmly. "We don't walk away. If someone flees, We'll be there to bring them back. Courage surged. They had entered a pact that evening, but would it hold when they laid their vulnerabilities bare? The room buzzed with a profound question, one that seemed insurmountable but tantalizingly close. The implications were dizzying. For the first time, Daniel grasped that the journey ahead would be riddled with trials, but it was out of those trials that they could truly forge the connections they desperately sought. "Who's next?" he asked, taking a deep breath, inviting the collective leap of faith. But just as the silence settled in his chest, he detected a shift beyond the conversation. A shadow stirred in the back of his mind, a revelation slipping just out of reach. Could their budding connection withstand the storm that was brewing? What new truths lay dormant, waiting to explode into the open? The moment thickened, and amid the faint hum of their shared anticipation, Daniel realized they were standing on the precipice of something transformative and daunting. Would it be the beginning of liberation? Or would they unlock a Pandora's box of unresolved traumas? Daniel's gaze lingered on the still silence in the room, the air thickening with unspoken fears and hopes. It was as if they were all caught in a delicate web of uncertainty, teetering on the edge of vulnerability. Each second felt like a paradox, a mix between desperate need and paralyzing dread. Margaret's eyes flitted from David to Emily, then back to Daniel, assessing the weight of his words. He sensed the burden of expectation. They were looking to him to guide how to navigate this emotional landscape. It was frightening to realize he had taken the role of an unintentional leader. A part of him wondered if he was qualified for such a task. But the other part, a whisper that grew louder, urged him onward. "Okay, I'll go," Emily finally said, her voice tremulous yet resolute. "I've been waiting for this moment, but I'm terrified to share." Daniel's heart raced. The turn had come quicker than he expected, but there was a sense of relief in her willingness. Emily clenched her fists, her knuckles white against the sharp contrast of her sleeveless top. "My truth is, I've spent the past decade living a lie. I've built a career based on what others expect of me, thinking their approval would fulfill me. But in doing so, I've neglected my own desires, my art, my writing, every part of myself that breathes life and passion." Her confession echoed painfully in Daniel's chest. He saw a flicker of something familiar in her eyes, regret mixed with a longing for freedom. "I used to think I could do it all," she continued, her voice growing stronger, more confident. "But I've learned that every choice made in fear only leads to more fear. I'm done chasing validation. I need to pursue what brings me joy." As her words sank in, Daniel felt a twinge of envy for her clarity. She was stepping closer to her truth, and yet that path loomed ahead, dark and twisted. He watched as the group connected with her vulnerability, nodding in understanding. This was their shared humanity, the struggle hidden beneath polished facades. An unexpected thrill surged through Daniel. A component of bravery ignited within him. He had taken the first step, and now they were following. But with every confession, the stakes rose. What if their truths were too uncomfortable? The bond they were trying to forge seemed both liberating and dangerous. David hesitated, shifting in his seat. "I guess I should go next. But what Emily said, it resonates with me," he breathed, his demeanor contrasting slightly with the rest. "I've spent my life trying to be what others want me to be, the dependable one, the solid friend. But I often feel like I'm just a shell. No one really knows what it's like inside." Daniel absorbed the implications. David was confessing a deeper truth. For so long, he had been the anchor. But who anchored him? Their connection was strengthening with each layer stripped away. But what would happen when all their anchors began to drift? A subtle tremor ran through Daniel. "What are we willing to risk?" he questioned aloud, contemplating the magnitude of this process. "What is the cost of uncovering our truths?" Emily, emboldened, added, "Perhaps it's worth breaking the surfaces to find out. I'd rather risk discomfort than live in a lie." Her words resonated in Daniel's mind. The argument had shifted from the safety of their comfort zones to the willingness to be uncomfortable together, a new philosophy crystallizing before him. Suddenly, he felt an overwhelming need to ground himself in this newfound realization, to steer the conversation beyond mere confession. "What if we built a plan for each other?" he suggested, excitement bubbling under his apprehension. Let's identify our core aspirations and each support one another on this endeavor. A pact, not just to reveal but to uplift each other towards our true dreams. Margaret's eyes lit up at the idea, and Daniel caught Susan's approving nod. A collective spark ignited among them, dancing around the room. But even in this moment of enthusiasm, doubt lingered at the periphery. What if their objectives clashed? What if the deeper truths they uncovered fractured the very bond they were trying to nurture? Daniel braced himself. They were still at the precipice, but now there was momentum building. A potential for growth that threatened to spiral out of control if any truth proved too heavy. As the conversation embraced the outlines of future ambitions, a sense of urgency unfurled. "Is everyone ready for this?" he asked, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon him. Would they all commit to this newfound endeavor? With hearts bared and ambitions cradled gently in their palms, they hovered on the edge, poised to leap into the unknown. But deep down, another part of Daniel wondered, could this alliance withstand the inevitable conflicts that lay ahead? He could almost taste the uncertainty, thick and unyielding in the air, as he awaited their responses. The energy in the room crackled as Daniel awaited their responses, each person lost in their thoughts, teetering between fear and hope. Emily's declaration lingered in the air, and it became apparent that they were no longer simply participants in a conversation. They were players in a high-stakes game of revelation and vulnerability. David nodded slowly, his expression pensive. "I think we all deserve a shot at pursuing our passions. If we can't be honest here, then what's the point?" His voice gained strength, resonating with Daniel's growing conviction. Margaret piped in, her tone firm yet warm. "Then let's create specific goals. We can help keep each other accountable. I had always dreamed of traveling. With no filters, no restrictions. Maybe it's time to finally make it happen." As they continued to cultivate a plan together, a sense of responsibility surged within Daniel. This was not merely about sharing aspirations. It was an open invitation to step out of shadows, to define themselves instead of accepting definitions imposed by others. "Let's be ambitious," Daniel encouraged, elaborating on the notion of accountability. "If anyone falters, we'll be right here to lift them back up. What we're doing is important. It's about radically redefining who we believe we can be." His own heart raced at the prospect. Could he really step into the wide-open spaces of his own unfulfilled desires? The reluctance that had once bound him felt lighter, less oppressive. And yet, there was a whisper of fear. What if he failed to uphold the commitment he was proposing? "Okay, I'll go first," Daniel declared, surprising even himself. "I've always wanted to write stories. It's something I brushed aside in pursuit of security and practicality. But the truth is, writing is where I find freedom. I want to finish a short story by the end of this month." A wave of warmth washed over him, an acknowledgement of his own sincerity. Emily's eyes shone bright with encouragement. "Yes, that's fantastic, Daniel." However, a flicker of doubt clenched tightly around his gut. Would his writing truly reflect who he was? What if his truth was rejected? "Writing isn't just about expression. It's about connection," Margaret added, her gaze steady on him. "If anyone can pull this off, it's you." As they rallied around Daniel, he began to see clearer paths emerging for the others, yet the thought of their potential shortcomings weighed heavy. David stood up now, driven by the group's energy. "For me, I want to learn to play guitar. It's something I've always wanted to do, but I've kept telling myself it's silly. But I'm done feeling that way. I want to be the one who surprises everyone." The room erupted in applause, each member feeling the weight of potential unfolding with every shared ambition. The initial anxiety began to dissolve, replaced with shared excitement. "Let's set regular check-ins," Emily proposed. "In a few weeks we should meet and see how we're progressing." As they mapped out their plans, Daniel felt alive. Each word forged layers of accountability, each commitment ignited a fire within. But there remained tension tangled in his core. Could these commitments stand against the chaos of life? Yet what intrigued him more was the uncertainty that accompanied revealing deeper truths. They were unearthing aspects of themselves that had long been buried. If each member made real strides, Would some truths threaten to unravel their newfound connections? "Okay, who's next?" he asked. Despite the thrill of anticipation, a thread of dread snaked through his thoughts. Would the revelations become too raw, too unraveling? Susan, quiet until now, inhaled deeply, her expression a mix of vulnerability and steely determination. "I guess it's time I admit something important. I've held myself back in my career, waiting for permission that never came. I want to step into leadership, lead a project that ignites real change within my field. It's time to stop being afraid to shine." Daniel's breath caught. This was no small confession. As she spoke, he could perceive the weight of her fear and the bravery that accompanied it. It was a challenge to break from the mold, a divergence from the expected. As the group absorbed her words, Daniel realized they were reaching a pivotal moment. This could redefine everything, not just their ambitions, but the essence of their relationships. He watched a ripple of understanding pass around, each face reflecting a blend of admiration and apprehension. "I support you," Daniel offered, his voice steady. "We'll be here for each other on this journey." But as he said it, the looming question persisted. What would happen when they all faced their fears and their truths collided? With an electrifying charge buzzing through the air, Daniel knew they had all crossed a threshold, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. As the group articulated their dreams, he sensed a storm brewing beneath their shared aspirations. Would their newfound commitments hold, or would the unraveling ties lead to discord? Daniel's heart raced at the prospect, feeling the weight of the upcoming challenges that lurked in the shadows. Would their courage stand against the inevitable testing of loyalty and truth? As they sat in the wake of Susan's revelation, anticipation coiled tightly around them, each member clinging to a fragile thread of hope and fear. What secrets lay ahead, threatening to expose more than they were prepared to face? As the palpable tension hung in the air, Daniel's heart raced. The consequence of their revelations weighed like a heavy cloud, filled with the potential for torrential downpours. He observed every face around the room, feeling the shared heartbeat of uncertainty and vulnerability that pulsed among them. The excitement of their commitments was accompanied by an undercurrent of fear about the truths yet to be unveiled. "Okay, I'll go next," he declared, the words surprising even him. In that moment he made a conscious choice to confront his own barriers, knowing that this could either strengthen their bond or expose rifts in their relationships. "I've always felt like I'm living in someone else's shadow. I chose a stable career path that would make others proud, but at what cost? There was a time I wanted to pursue art, painting, creating. I let fear dictate my choices, led by the worry that I wouldn't be taken seriously. But I can't hide from it anymore. I want to rediscover that passion." Silence ensued, and Daniel felt the weight of their gazes, not as pressure but as a budding acceptance of his journey. For far too long he had buried that desire beneath layers of performance, yet now it surged to the surface with blistering energy. Emily broke the silence with a smile, her eyes lit with understanding. "That's incredible, Daniel. You're taking a step into who you truly are." Margaret nodded, her voice filled with tenderness. "Creating freely is a powerful form of expression. You've been brave, and I admire that." The camaraderie shifted the atmosphere, transforming their fears into motivations for collective growth. Daniel felt more connected than ever, not just to his desires but to the collective aspirations blooming around the room. David was next, and he stood tall, anchoring his insecurities as he prepared to share. "I want to be open about my decision to shift gears in my career. I've realized that pursuing what's expected of me won't quench my thirst for genuine fulfillment. So, I'm making a transition towards something that resonates deeply: design. I want to blend creativity and logic to impact how we live." Cheers erupted in the room, and Daniel's heart soared at the openness. Their identities were melding like colors in a vivid canvas, each revelation layering their connection in brilliant hues. Yet he could not escape the thought that with each confession came the potential for friction. Margaret was quick to follow, her voice imbued with newfound strength. "If we're doing this, it's my turn to break free from perceived unworthiness. I've always held back in mentorship roles. I want to ignite passion in others, crafting a project where I can cultivate new talent. That's my dream." As they celebrated Margaret's boldness, Daniel felt electric. Her courage inspired him to push against the weight of his fears. This was more than personal resolution. It was a collective unearthing of potential that was palpable. Daniel turned to Emily, gesturing for her to continue. Through the excitement, a subtle hesitation lingered in her gaze, a flicker of insecurity lingering amidst her bravery. "I guess here go," Emily breathed before continuing. "I've always felt I had to choose between being the perfect daughter and pursuing my dreams. I abandoned writing out of fear of ridicule, but it's still my deepest passion." Her eyes sparkled with dedication. "I will no longer shy away. I am committing to write daily, to tap into that part of myself buried beneath expectations." Applause erupted, and Daniel's heart swelled with pride. In this moment, they became a tapestry of shared truth, woven together through their vulnerabilities and ambitions. This was the space he had always sought, a foundation built upon authenticity. Then came the silence, a short interlude filled with the echoes of their aspirations. They sat together, hearts beating as one, but Daniel still sensed the tension coiling beneath the surface. "Will all this truly last?" he wondered aloud, his voice laced with concern. "As we share our truths and build upon them, we may face inner struggles. What happens when those real moments come to test our resolve?" Margaret was prepared. "We confront those fears head-on. We can't pretend the road to authenticity won't have bumps. We're not here to rush through it. We're committed to holding each other accountable, even when it gets uncomfortable." The room hummed with agreement, a unified sound of support rising as each person nodded in assent. They were not merely sharing dreams, they were collectively establishing a safety net, one spun from the fabric of earned vulnerabilities. "Let's set a timeline establishing when we'll check in on our journeys," Daniel suggested. "Let's build a space to reflect, adjust, and support one another. We'll have to commit, even when we don't want to." As final arrangements were made, the collective energy shifted into anticipation. Each of them was stepping onto a path fueled by intention, ready to tackle any storms that might emerge as they began this new chapter of not just self-discovery, but shared discovery. They had cracked open the door to authenticity, and a world waiting to be influenced by their courage. Even as the weight of this newfound clarity filled the room, Daniel's heart fluttered, but this time fear was empowered, pushed aside by the sheer magnitude of their union. What started as a confrontation of shadows transformed into a commitment to truth, their past no longer defining them. Everyone felt it. They were not just telling stories, they were writing new futures, not as individual pieces but as collaborators in the narrative of their lives. In this moment of promise, Daniel declared, "No matter what the future holds, let's remain each other's safety nets. We can and will continue to support each other." As he said the words, a wave of solid confidence washed over him. The bonds they forged amidst vulnerability became archaic threads, the strongest fabric imaginable. Deep within, Daniel felt a heartwarming satisfaction. Today marked a new threshold, a definitive resolution rooted in personal growth and authentic transformation. In the end, Daniel realized that they had vanished past the confines of fear. They weren't merely individuals searching for fulfillment, they had morphed into a collective force of bravery, standing side by side on the precipice of courage, ready to leap into the expansive possibilities that lay ahead, unafraid, united, and undeniably stronger together. So if you felt inspired by Daniel's journey and the courage of his friends, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support and not miss out on more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others can experience this empowering tale. Join the conversation. Comment below your reactions and theories about their unfolding saga. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the message of courage and honesty together.